This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Cannabinoid Nation.
Being an entrepreneur is no easy task, and being an entrepreneur in the cannabis and hemp space comes with its own unique set of challenges. These challenges include keeping up with regulatory compliance, having an adequate business plan, developing a sales and marketing strategy, designing a website, or creating an e-commerce store for your CBD or THC products. These operators face these challenges on the daily, and it can be overwhelming and in most cases, not the best use of their time. That's why you need to talk to the team of consultants and specialists at Cannabinoid Nation. They provide best-in-class industry solutions that aim to increase the likelihood of success for growers, processors, and manufacturers. Their industry solutions include business registration consulting, regulatory compliance consulting, e-commerce and website development, digital marketing services, and white label services. The company also has an online store with high-quality hemp products that are U.S. Hemp Authority certified, which means they meet the most thorough, independently verified standards available in the hemp supplement industry. Visit their website to learn more about their solutions and their high-quality hemp products at cannabinoidnation.com. That's cannabinoidnation.com. Cannabinoid Nation, the cannabis and hemp industry's premier brokerage and consulting firm. Hello, my fellow people of the plant. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast, your favorite podcast that includes industry-facing conversations with the industry's leading experts that aim to educate and inform the public regarding the plant's endless benefits. My guest today is Mario Rodriguez. He's the owner and founder at Bootleg Avocado, L.L.C. Mario Rodriguez, what's going on, man?
Hey, Kevin, thanks so much for giving me this opportunity to be on the podcast and everything else. Excited to jump into things.
Of course, man. Yeah, no, before we recorded, I was telling you that I'm looking forward to talking with you today and diving deep into the world of culinary and cannabis. And full transparency, I did consume before we started recording. And so if I'm drooling or if I, start to tell you that the munchies are coming on, apologies in advance. But
You gotta have snacks with you. I mean, I have all my liquids here, my coffee, my water. I just had a snack, so I'm always prepared as a chef. Like I'm always prepared to have some snacks and some food around me. So
see, that's the smart thing. And my wife tells me that all the time because I was a wrestler, back in another life. And so weight management was a big thing. And I'd get hangry when I
uh
didn't eat. So having those snacks around, having, protein, little snack packs, that's important to do throughout the day, along
it
with,
is.
your medication, of course.
Your medication, yeah, your plant-based medicine.
That's right. And speaking of, so that's a great segue because we're talking today about combining those two things,
Yeah.
right?
hmm
So, Mario, why don't we start with your background? Tell us a little bit about, how you got started and what kind of led you into this path of culinary and cannabis.
Yeah. So for me, I've always ever since I was little, I always wanted to be a chef, and I grew up around food. My parents are first generation American. They're Colombian and Ecuadorian, so they're immigrants that came to the country. So for them, my mom was a great cook. My dad, he cooked as well. So I grew up around food, and my parents always, our birthdays, we always celebrate our birthdays with a lot of food, and they cooked for days, and they had invite all the friends and all that stuff. And it was
Oh, that
more of a,
sounds like an amazing dinner party or get together because I'm all about that. Family getting together, wine flowing,
yeah,
great food. Is that what it was like?
it was exactly that. It was more kind of a full family party with our closest friends versus it was like then versus a traditional birthday that you have like your school kids, friends coming over
All
and
right.
you guys go somewhere. No, it was in our little apartment. It was a ton of food. My dad, it was like his party too as well. So that's how it kind of all started. And during the holidays, I would help my mom or my grandma cook, and I kind of just learned from my grandma because I spent a lot of time with her while my parents worked. So that's kind of where the food side of things really came from. And as I went through like high school, I had like some really good, amazing grades. So I had the opportunity to go to college, which was great. And then I had the decision of either going to culinary school or going to college. So I was lucky enough to have a guidance counselor, which she's like, well, eventually, what do you want to do with food? I'm like, I want to have my own restaurant there. And so she's like, Yeah. So what about business? What about learning, about the business side of things before you go
Wow.
to culinary school to kind of know, to know if that's something you want to get to. And that's been like the best advice I've had, especially at kind of that age when you're like deciding
Absolutely.
what to do. So I went to culinary school, I went to business school, Babson College, one of the top business programs for entrepreneurship in the country. Got a pretty nice grant and everything else. And I started the, things on the business side of things, but I always, was involved in food and went out to dinner and cooked and all that stuff always kind of happened. So for me, it was like, okay, eventually I'm going to jump into the food world. It just took a little bit longer because I wanted to, in your early 20s, trying to figure out one, what you
Sure.
want to do, how to shift into really what you love. And then you always have that other noise of like what your friends are doing and you're kind of staying with them and everything else. So it took me a good couple of years to say, okay, after I graduated college, I worked for a consulting startup, doing logistics and operations consulting. It was great. I learned a ton, but there was a point in which, I'm always looking to see what was happening in the food world. Like, oh, this chef sounds really cool. I want to go meet him. And then I shifted and I quit my job, and I quit my job during the recession, which was 2009 recession. It was like the worst of the worst. Like everyone's
Right.
losing their job. I quit mine. I should have just waited for everything to go down. And then I went to culinary school, and my parents were like, "Are you sure you want to do this? Like, the economy is in the shitter right now. Like, how are you
Right.
going to rebound? You know, coming out of culinary school, earning minimum wage." Like is the worst career change you could do at that point.
Right. Right.
It was kind of not at the height of celebrity chefs. It was kind of like it already kind of started. I think Top Chef was, I think, kind of starting then. I don't know. It was just kind of a weird transition and a big gamble.
Hmm.
But I knew within myself it was like I just want to be in the food world. I just want to
It
understand
was
what.
your passion, right? I mean, it's
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. But the hardest part about the passion part is like, how do you turn that into a career that you can sustain yourself and understand that, okay, I can live off this and do it on my own means and do it on my own time. That's the hard part, because with being a chef in a restaurant, it's not your time. You're basically, it's the restaurant's time. The hours are long, you're working holidays. Like it's a grind, and it's a very hard environment to be in, physically, you're on your feet all the day, and also mentally, because
Hmm.
like you're in a very high stress situation. But I wanted to, graduating out of culinary school, I graduated top of my class. I wanted to work in the best restaurants that I could, and I wanted to learn and absorb and all those things. So I felt like, at that age, I was probably in my late 20s, mid to late 20s, restarting my career after, like, all my other friends were, directors and managers, VPs of their, so it's
Right.
a
Right.
completely different situation. And it took a lot for me to kind of get to where that kind of, where I've really felt comfortable and felt confident, like, yes, this is where I could work at this level, and I could work beyond that. And now I was at a point that I needed to go on my own and figure out how to do that properly.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I give you a lot of respect for doing that. I mean, like you said, it's a big gamble. That's a big decision to make. Being in your what was it, early to mid 20s? I mean, that was the right time, I'd say. You know what I mean, to do it. You're not too old, you're not too young at that point, and you've
Oh,
already
it was late 20s. It was late
late
20s.
20s. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
no, this is like, I think I was 28, 27 or 28 around that time. So you're like looking forward to your 30s. Like, everyone's like,
right,
at my 30s, I want to be this, I want to do this.
right.
I was literally starting over, like it
Right.
was literally, but I was in a world in which I loved. Like, I love the camaraderie in the kitchen. I love the chefs I was interacting with and meeting. I wasn't traveling. I was stuck in a kitchen,
Hmm.
13, 14, 15 hours a day, but I was working at that level, at that Michelin star level, that you're like, I love this. Like, no one's better than me. Like, you're kind of like at the height of like your performance, your cooking, everything.
Right. And you know, when you said like when the guidance counselor gave you that advice, you're so right. That is the best advice that you could have gotten because, you know, a lot of people jump in head first with the passion aspect, which is fine, right? Because
Hmm.
they'll, you know, the winners and losers shake out, but they'll figure out kind of how to make it work on the business side. But the
Yeah,
fact that you kind of started with business and then eventually led back into your passion, you already had that knowledge and expertise of operations and bootstrapping and all that kind of stuff, you know, that a startup would do. So you kind of
yeah.
were ready, you know, you're in good position to do so.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It was the right environment. Like I'm that person that loves to bootstrap and kind of grind it out and figure things out. So I'm also proud of the fact that every company that I either consulted for or worked in or even started was within that startup environment. So that's for me the number one requirement of who I do business with and who I interact with. It needs to be in that realm because it's just a different level, different type of person that you're dealing with, and it's not
Mhm.
someone that is just basically waiting for things to happen. It's kind of like everyone's sprinting, everyone's grinding, everyone's doing their thing.
Right. Yeah. And make sure that you're efficient doing it and don't delay or slow down the process.
Yeah,
Right. Because
exactly. It's like you better keep up. That's the environment.
yeah, exactly. And I've worked in a restaurant actually within the last 10 years. I was a waiter and I just tell you, man, like I'm a hard worker. But I just that environment is like you said, so high stress, so high, fast paced that it
Hmm.
takes a certain personality to do it. And I'll tell you, it was hard for me, man. It really was to keep up and to multitask that way with so many people keep walking in. And oh man, you know, and
Hmm.
that's just the server side. We're not even talking about the chef who's actually getting the plates out and working with,
Right.
you know, everybody in the kitchen, right? So
Yeah, and we don't work for tips. That's the other thing. Like we get that. I think I started at 8.50 an hour, and then once I worked at Gramsci Tavern in New York, I think I was at 10 or 12, and at the height I was maybe at 12, if 11.50 an hour, maybe $12 an hour, maybe.
oh, that's crazy, man.
So
Yeah.
imagine doing that in your early 30s. You're like, oh yeah, make 12.50 an hour. Yeah, that's cool.
But hey, it's that passion that's driving you, you know, and every
Yeah,
all your experiences growing up with your family, like we talked about earlier.
yeah.
So let's talk in this timeline. So you make the move, you're wanting to work at, you know, the top restaurants.
Mhm.
What does that lead?
Yeah, so that led me down to so I was in New York City predominantly. Then I moved down to New Orleans to be a sous chef down here. And again, New Orleans is kind of another mecca of food and its own kind of culture and that whole environment. And I loved running one of the kitchens down there. And then there's this organization called, or this startup called Dinner Lab. They came knocking. They basically their concept is doing pop-up events and dinners showcasing up and coming chefs. So not showcasing the execs or the ones and twos. It's the twos and the threes and the fours, the sous chefs, chef de cuisines, the line cooks, and give them opportunity to do their menu for one night in front of the members that they had. So it was great for me to be kind of for me to cook my own cultured food, Colombian
Right.
food or Ecuadorian food, or a mix of the Malaysian food that I learned to cook in other restaurants. So, and then basically for them, they were looking for a director of operations, someone to help on the culinary operations side, and they were startups. So it was kind of like, okay, this is my opportunity to leave the kitchen and apply both the business side of things and then culinary side of things that I learned throughout the past 8 to 10 years. So Dinner Lab led me to expand that concept or that operation from 3 cities. They were operating 3 cities to 31 cities across the U.S. So we were a national company. We were doing pop-up experiences, and the cool thing is we did the pop-up experiences in cool locations, like we did at a motorcycle shop or boathouse or somewhere like really like cool, not in a
Yeah.
kitchen. So it was not only like not only are you pushing on the culinary side of things, you're also pushing on logistics and the plating and all that stuff. And we did it very like restaurant style and everything else, like kind of like a family dinner type of thing. So So that's kind of like what led me to be like, you know what, I'm not going to step back in the kitchen ever again. There are opportunities in the food startup world right now that will lend a chef with my experience a lot of opportunities. So
Mhm.
I was with Dinner Lab for a great while. Unfortunately, we didn't make it. We ran out of money, like most startups do.
Right, right.
And then for me, it was kind of the opportunity to be like, okay, you've learned a lot over the past 10, 12 years. You have the acumen, you have the experience on just the business side of things, and you know the business side of things of restaurants now and everything else. So for me, I wanted to go into consulting for my own realm, but more on innovation and the culinary space that I can really focus on and give my expertise to. There's
Mhm.
a lot of products and brands that are being launched now, specifically in the plant-based world. So this is kind of where I went from the shift into, like, the popular food into now the healthier, the wellness, the plant-based vegan side of things, which is it's a big thing right now, with like all the meat analogs, the alternatives and all that stuff. So for me, it was like, okay, that's where we want to really kick off and start what Bootleg Avocado is all about. It's more about really providing the culinary overlay or culinary focus of a product or a brand or a concept that needs that support. So let's say you want to come up with your own plant-based or vegan ice cream or whatnot. There is certain flavor profiles you need to understand, and what gives it, kind of that umami feel, or that flavor that you want to have another scoop of that ice cream versus some of the other plant-based ice creams that are out there that are just like icy and just like it just doesn't taste like ice cream. So for us, that's what we really want to start with Bootleg Avocado, is really focus on the food innovation side of things, work together with the R&D side of these early stage companies, and provide anything culinary, recipe development, um, product development side, thinking through new products and everything else, and then also being the voice and the knowledge base of the brand. So that's kind of what we do for Bootleg Avocado. Right now, we're really focused on a lot of the plant-based concepts that are being launched. Most of our clients are actually international, and they're looking to come into the U.S. So that's also a big opportunity. So again, like starting from like the beginning, in which, like, I'm a line cook, like grinding down. Now it's like we have international clients. We are really we know what we're talking about as far as the culinary sense of things, and we know all the products that are coming through in the plant-based side of things. There's egg alternatives, there's meat alternatives, there's vegan ice cream, there's cheeses that are made of nuts and everything else. So how to really um make sure those products taste like the original product, if not better.
Mhm. Yeah, no, when you talk about making that pivot from like the popular trendy dishes to more plant-based wellness
Hmm.
culinary, I would imagine with like what you said of the innovations and what brands are doing to create these dishes, cannabis, with the momentum that it's seeing and whatnot, I would imagine that it falls in that category, and that's just opening up a whole new world of innovation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of the next logical shift that we saw. It's basically, okay, we know people want to be out there. They want to lose weight. They want to make sure that they're living longer. So obviously, a lot of these plant-based products, that's kind of what they provide. They provide you a better lifestyle. They provide you, to feel better, give you that nice gut health that is needed. Eating a lot of animal-based meats, it ruins your gut. And also, if you drink alcohol a lot, that ruins your gut health. You
Mhm.
feel bad, you're depressed, it really ruins your body. So thinking through the other plant medicine or the plant-based products that are out there, so cannabis and psychedelics is kind of the next gradual thing. As the cannabis industry is maturing, everyone says, and I agree with this, it's kind of in that early stages of sophistication of people adopting, cannabis and even psychedelics, that they just don't know how to integrate that within their daily lives. So obviously food is a very natural way of doing it. So a lot of people that don't smoke cannabis, they eat edibles. You
Hmm.
know, like it's like I love to eat. I'll try one of these gummies and see kind of where that leads me to. So there is that opportunity that we saw is, you know, obviously we're very plant-based focused. We see this plant-based medicine really coming into play, how to really combine those properly, and how to really provide people that normally wouldn't consume cannabis the opportunity to do it, you know, in the right way through education and also through a great experience. You know, like every time we talk to these brands on our platform is like it's all about the experience that we provide to the consumer. You know, that experience of an infused beverage. Okay, it looks great, it looks tasty, I want to have it. Let me take a sip. Oh yeah, I feel the terpenes, I feel like all the things, I can taste all the flavor profiles, I taste the experience, and then 5-10 minutes later I'm just kind of in that nice zen feel. So it goes down to the experience that each of these products provide, and that's what we really help with for our clients.
Hmm. And I would imagine there is a huge science component to this as
Hmm.
well, right? Like the
Yes.
formulations you talked about earlier, like, your consumers, they may want to, be on a diet or lose weight or not be as tired. And of course, different plants help with different ailments and interact with our body and our receptors differently. And
Hmm.
cannabis is just the same. I mean, we're biologically married to the plant with our endocannabinoid system.
Yep. Yep.
And so, like with Bootleg Avocado, how do you all go about your research when it comes to formulating products specifically with cannabis and maybe other plants and breaking down the cannabinoids within them?
Yeah, great question. So for us, you know, we as much as we educate our consumers, we love to get educated by people, by food scientists, by people who actually have the science and have the science that evidence behind it. So we would collaborate with a lot of the food scientists. For us, again, we're going to focus on the flavor profile. We're going to focus on the application. We're going to focus on making sure it's tasty and you want more of it and it's a great experience. So for us, we reach out to a lot of the food scientists that we have within our network and say they'll say, okay, these are the parameters. We'll work together on the formulation and what sorts of effects, what sort of, again, flavor profile, texture that we're looking for. So that's how we kind of get a lot of that information. The great thing about, you know, the cannabis space, and you know, which we're learning a lot of people really would love to collaborate and really understand each other, what people do within the industry. Everyone's kind of like probably feel themselves out, like, oh, so this is what you do. Oh, great. You know, like love to connect you with this person. Like that's how it should be. And I kind of like where the industry is right now. It's kind of that like let's meet and greet type thing, and let's try and experiment with this thing. But there's also some brands and some people are just like, no, 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 I got this. You know, I have my own. I don't want to share that with you, which is fine. But I just you know, like on our end, we do a lot of collaborations. We try and work with a lot of different innovation houses and kind of help them through, and also connect them with people in our food network. You know, like that's the other thing. What the cannabis industry is missing right now is food scientists and chefs and people that can connect them to the food industry that have done this for decades. You know, like as much as we don't want um, Heinz or Kraft or all those guys to take over the edible side of things, there are people who work for those companies that have the experience and have scaled products, you know, over decades. So that's the experience that the cannabis industry will need. And for us, with through Bootleg and through our event series, we help to connect that. So that's kind of the other side of things.
That's a really great point that you brought up that I haven't thought about yet, right? We're so focused on what happens after federal legalization, and
Hmm.
everyone's focused on big pharma stepping in and big tobacco stepping in, right?
Hmm.
But like you just mentioned, food, companies like Kraft and Heinz and whatnot, like those are major food conglomerates, right? That why wouldn't they step in? I mean, and kind of try to own the edible sector.
Yeah.
And it's a good point that you made about kind of the disconnect of where people at on the culinary side of the house. It seems
Hmm.
like edibles are taking off, the candy formulations. You also have cannabis infused beverages, which are
Hmm.
also still kind of trending, but there's
Yeah.
not as much talk on the culinary side. It's more niche, right? You've got
Hmm.
private restaurants, or you've got one, individual chefs that are out there doing their thing. But
Yeah.
so how can what can we do to kind of raise more awareness besides talking about it right here,
Yeah. No, so the reason that there aren't that many like well-known culinary chefs, and there will be, is because it's through legalization. Obviously, California, they have a ton. The West Coast has a ton of like these celebrity cannabis chefs, and they've been doing it for years, and they're awesome, they're great, and everything else. The problem is with the rest of the country is like the chefs that are working day to day, they've been stuck in restaurants, they've been stuck in, their day to day, and trying to make it. And COVID,
Right.
really crushed the industry. It's still crushing it,
Terrible. Yeah.
in a bad way. So what they're figuring out now is like, I don't want to be in a kitchen. I don't want to get paid, this amount of money for what? I'm going back into the environment I was for how long? So there is a shift now with these sorts of chefs, even celebrity chefs that you've seen on TV. They've reached out to us, and now that New York and the East Coast is becoming legal, they reached out to us like,
Right.
what are you guys at Bootleg doing for edibles, for manufacturing, all those things? And they want to leave the industry. I mean, these are restaurant owners, these are restaurateurs, these are people who've been on TV, and they're all chopping at the bit to get involved in cannabis. So they're trying to figure out how to do it. What's the right way of doing it? How can I get my edibles brand out there? So that shift is going to happen. And the on the media side of things, there are shows right now. There was a show on Netflix that had like a cannabis cooking competition, which was cool. It was a little
I
bit
saw
too.
that.
It was
Yeah.
really hokey and staged, but hey, everyone starts somewhere, just like Chopped.
Right.
When you see
Right.
the early episodes of Chopped, it was really hokey, and now it has its own thing.
Right.
Just like Top Chef, now it's a thing.
They
Um,
find themselves out, like they find their identity, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Their audience and the right mix of people and all that stuff. So it's gonna shift. You'll see a lot of those chefs coming out of the woodwork that like, oh, I didn't know you're a cannabis chef. So like you'll see a lot of those brands and those people really come out in the next couple of years. Now that again, New York City, New Jersey is gonna be legal. That'll happen next year. Everyone right now, we're all having conversations with it. Everyone's going to figure out like what we do. We're going to go back to live events in New York City. We actually started the the events right before COVID February, so we actually had close to 130 people there. And it was all about culinary cannabis, and it was like we
Nice.
invited these brands and these chefs to come in, and everyone's like, this is great, we can't wait for this to happen, 2020 is going to be great, and then COVID hit. But we were able to really do this on a virtual level, and we do events every 2 to 3 weeks showcasing different segments of the food, beverage, cannabis, and psychedelic side of things. So we just did one on edibles, which is really interesting, in the sense of we discussed the business side of edibles. We discussed the early stages for you to manufacture your edibles. So again, like the 101 of things that you want to learn if you're a chef, or if you're someone that works in the food industry or interested in kind of launching your own brand. That's what we do on those events. We try and segment those different conversation pieces. We're going to be doing one about confections. So all the brownies, the cookies, the ice creams, and of the world of the infused world, we're going to be discussing that.
I'm
And then next
drooling. I'm drooling. I told you I was gonna drool, man. See?
yeah, so that's kind of what the Bootleg Avocado Presents event series is all about. It's kind of the congregation. It's of kind of the people in the industry that are innovating in it, are pushing it forward, are sharing kind of their knowledge and their wealth of knowledge, and helping other people to get up and running. So that's, to answer your question, that's what we're doing. That we are providing that platform for them to get connected. Our team is always willing to do intros, post event, to people, to chefs who are looking to get involved. So that's kind of how we're playing our part.
Love that you guys did that shift to virtual, right? I mean, everybody had to adapt during the lockdowns of the pandemic, and the fact that you were able to disseminate that content, which is very helpful,
Yeah.
especially with that transition that you mentioned. It makes so much sense, right?
Mhm.
Because of how hard, how badly impacted the restaurant industry was during COVID. That's a natural kind of transition, it seems like, for some chefs, right? Because this is such a burgeoning industry, and there's so much room for that particular role, you
Mhm.
know?
Yep.
And the fact that you guys are, providing education and information to kind of help get them started is great. I
Yep.
I want to ask you about, you talked about going to innovation labs and whatnot. And so
Mhm.
from your perspective, Mario, what have you seen on the innovation front when it comes to edibles, both for cannabis, and let's take it even into the psychedelic realm? You've
Yep.
mentioned psychedelics earlier, so.
Yeah. So on the cannabis side of things, obviously what's popular right now is fast acting, bioavailability. So it kind of, it all kind of plugs into your ECS and everything else. Um, Vegan. So obviously vegan alternatives is a big thing, which is kind of within our wheelhouse. And then dosing, what's the proper dose for certain people. And then it gets more creative. It gets more creative in like live resin and a couple other sorts of effects, and more kind of that, like, you get that like more hempy feel and flavor that some people might like, some people might not. But that's kind of where a lot of those edibles are kind of sitting. And then there's also kind of the next level, which is kind of the artisanal, really like chef type of products, like infused ice cream or infused salts or infused, I'm trying to think other things, seasonings, hot sauces, things like that. So that's kind of where everything's happening, and where everything's growing to. I think people have definitely launched a few products in that realm, which I think is interesting. um with the psychedelic side of things, one thing we're finding right now, the psychedelic side of things is pretty much focus on chocolates, and kind of just the easy way of kind of delivering the mushroom in kind of the right sort of dosage. That's kind of where it's very early stage, because you can really, the dosing is the important part. You don't want to get that wrong. So
Right.
what and also the other thing is it's illegal. So like right now there are people out, experimenting with it. We actually have going to have someone in a couple of weeks when we talk about confections in the world of cannabis and psychedelics. I think that's going to be June 8th. That talk, we actually, one of our panelists is, that's what they're doing. They have a line of edibles that covers, psilocybin in chocolates. They also have a psilocybin spray, and they're going to be talking about more the other sorts of confections that they're going to be jumping into. So right now it's very early. It's not as involved, but the ways that you can kind of consume, psilocybin is obviously you kind of dry the mushroom and you put it in a powder form, and
Mhm.
make sure you kind of dose it naturally into like a chocolate or a couple other realms. A lot of teas, mushroom and tea is kind of hand in hand. So a lot of teas are very helpful in that. And you also want to, when you do a psilocybin edible, you want to make sure you're incorporating elements that will help to alleviate your stomach, because if you consume some sorts of mushrooms, they might upset your stomach. So like adding ginger to a product would be really nice, because ginger soothes your stomach. So we're getting to that point that we're actually mixing more the natural uh, foods like ginger into psilocybin, into cocoa. Like that. How great is that? Like you
Yeah.
have that opportunity of like, wow, this sounds like the cleanest food you could ever find. That's kind of where it's getting to. You want to make sure that all these products, you're integrating kind of those natural plant medicines. I mean, ginger's a plant medicine, turmeric's a plant medicine. all of the things really come together, and you definitely have a very holistic product that a lot of people are excited to try and get things, get things rolling on that. So
Yeah, I gotta tell you, when I hear you talk about adding ginger to alleviate the stomach, like upset stomach feeling that you get after taking psilocybin and
yeah.
turmeric, I'm thinking we've come a long way since grinding up mushrooms and putting it on the pizza in college. You know what I mean?
Or in
So,
a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or yeah, exactly. I've seen those videos on YouTube. I'm like, oh, I don't think that's gonna taste that good, or you're not gonna be feeling good.
no,
Yeah,
definitely not. No, no, no. I want to ask you this. So when we go back to the conversation of innovation in the edible space for cannabis,
yeah.
is there a particular extraction method that y'all prefer? Like, um, like a live rosin press versus like CO2 or ethanol? Like, what's the best?
It's not really a preference for us. It's kind of more what would lead to more of a pure type of effect and everything else. And it's all improving. That's the thing about this. Like every source, every brand that's kind of launching these sorts of, live resin, a couple other things, fast acting. The technology and the equipment behind it is always changing.
Mhm.
It's always, especially when you start mass producing this. Like how do you teach, so let's say you're out of California, right? And you want to find a manufacturer in Massachusetts. How do you, one, protect your IP and all the formulation? And then two, show them how to properly produce your gummy properly so it's consistent throughout. So it's going to change as kind of mass production really happens, and the machines that are being used, and the infrastructure is going to change and improve as well. So again, going back to the point of, the food industry has these all sort, like when you go into mass production, you see all these machines like CVAP machines, these huge blenders and choppers. That's going to get as sophisticated down the road just for cannabis itself. Right now, the equipment is so expensive that, you're like, oh shit, how am I going to make this profitable? But I need to mass produce this. So it's going to change. It's going to get a little bit cheaper. It's going to get a lot more like uh this is the equipment for gummies. This is the equipment for infused ice cream. This is the equipment for, whatever. It's gonna get to that point for sure.
Along those lines, Mario, as we wrap up, give us
Mhm.
some more future predictions. You just talked about, which is a really good point, like the innovation in equipment, and we'll designate, machines for particular formulations. Is there anything else that you kind of see within the edible space, the culinary space, that we can predict?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, more chefs, more well-known chefs are going to jump into the culinary canvas side of things. You'll start hearing these names like, oh wow, that's so and so from Top Chef, and now they have a line of whatever. So that is going to be happening. A lot of the early, the younger cooks are going to jump into cannabis and all those things, and they're going to be chomping at the bit to work in some of these innovation houses and everything else to learn. So you're going to see a lot of that. Edibles are going to get more sophisticated, like, psilocybin and psychedelics are going to jump into there as well, once they get some sort of legality behind it. And people are going to start experimenting with that. One thing that I also will, this is inevitable in any early industry, is there's going to be consolidation. There's going to be that retraction of like, okay, everyone's launching the edibles brand. Not everyone's going to make it. There is that, you're still starting a business, and we all know starting business is very risky. It's nothing's guaranteed. So I think what a lot of people are doing now, which they're learning from what's happening in the West Coast, is they're starting with partnerships. They're starting with bigger teams. They're starting with knowing, okay, oh yeah, you do beverage over there, we're doing edibles. Maybe down the road, let's be friends. Down the road, we can kind of help each other out and maybe become a conglomerate, or we could just basically we'll contract you out, or vice versa. I think there people need to be smart business people behind it. And I think that we're going to get to that point that all those things are really going to come together a little bit easier and more efficient on the East Coast, because we've learned a lot what's happening on kind of the West Coast. Even on the social equity side of things, we're again having those licenses go out to people of color and minorities. That's off the bat. That's amazing. So we're getting better. All this is happening. And I think another thing that is going to happen is you're going to see a lot of these bigger name brands jumping into the cannabis space. They're already experimenting. Like there's rumors of like Starbucks already looking at edibles, and someone else, and Campbell Soup was kind of the other rumors as well. So you're going to be seeing this also happen. But in order to kind of take advantage of that, is I would rather hire someone from those companies and be part of our team and kind of help to produce those products, to scale.
Right, right. No, that's very well said. And I want to ask you just future outlook plans for Bootleg Avocado. Like, what do you guys?
Yeah.
What are your goals for this year and beyond?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, one thing that we're always proud of is networking. Getting to know everyone in the food, beverage, and cannabis space that needs a voice, that needs to really let people know what they're doing, educate people. That's the Bootleg Avocado Presents platform. That's our event series. So we're going to continue virtual. I think since we're New York City located. We're going to go back to live events at the end of the year. One of our bigger events is our holiday party, in which we bring a ton of people together and we talk about in kind of like a shorter format, and we're like, let's talk about this, let's talk about that, and then keep on shuffling some of these panelists through. So we're going to continue those through the platform, and that'll be our marketing engine until we launch our manufacturing facility in New Jersey and hopefully New York City next year. So we're applying for the license. And again, what we want to do is make our name for ourselves, our brand, and our support in the industry, solidify that. We have the marketing engine now as we go into the manufacturing side of things, whether we produce for other people or for ourselves, we have kind of that brain trust of people that we can reach out to. Like I said, we have those connections in the beverage side of things, which we're excited about. So that's going to be what 2022 looks like for Bootleg. Obviously, we'll probably go into another name once we do manufacturing, but again, building the network is number one for us. Helping to amplify these brands and have these conversations with people is number two. And then after that, it's going to be our execution and our manufacturing of the edibles in with a very plant-based focus. And that's kind of what we want to do. That's the goal.
Well, it sounds like a great, roadmap for what you guys have planned out. And I
Mhm.
just love the whole mindset of collaboration, bringing everyone together. We're stronger in numbers because
Yeah,
that's really what it's all about. I mean, we know even just as individual human beings, we only have the bandwidth for, to focus on one or two things, right? I mean, and this industry is huge and it's so complex. So the more that you can partner and work with different companies to serve and help the industry grow is a great thing. You
hmm
did trigger my mind, and I have to ask now because we got a question on Twitter. How did you
sure.
come up with the name Bootleg Avocado?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, you kind of like hit the nail on the head earlier, where like it seems like you kind of been in that bootstrapping environment. Like you said it yourself, So
Right.
for us, it was kind of like, avocado is kind of one of those fruits that they're very versatile. They add the right amount of fat to certain things. They taste great. They're healthier for you. So that's kind of the avocado part of things. I love avocados, and I'm Latino, so
Of course.
and then the bootleg is kind of like the kind of the bootstrap and bootlegging part of things to figure out and work through problems and work through things within the food industry that to come up with a solution. So that's kind of where bootleg avocado came through and how we created it. I was kind of sitting at a cafe. I'm like, this is great. This sounds awesome. Like it forces you to ask what it's about and like what do you all do and how do you start that. So that's kind of how we started it.
It starts the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. And that was shout out to Brian Fields, host of the Dime podcast, who asked that question, by the
All
way.
right. Yeah.
So,
Thanks, Brian.
right on, Mario. Well, where can people find y'all's website and social media if they want to learn more?
Yeah, bootlegavocado.com, obviously one word. And then all our handles are bootleg_avocado. We have all our events, through the voice, the audio through podcast, Bootleg Avocado. And then we have all our stuff on YouTube, our visuals of the events if you want to see what all that looks like. We have highlights. And then everything's under Bootleg Avocado, even Twitter, Facebook, we're all in the handles, and even TikTok as well. So we're up there as well.
Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, you really opened my eyes today with future predictions regarding, where the edible and culinary cannabis space is gonna kind of land in the next couple of years. So
Hmm.
really appreciate the insights and the education around what Bootleg Avocado is doing to serve the industry, man. So
Yeah.
love to have you back on in the future as things evolve. We'll kind of run back the predictions and just kind of talk about it.
Yeah,
So
it would be great to definitely see that. So no, I appreciate the time, Kevin. Thanks so much for all the opportunity and helping us, get our name out and all that stuff.
absolutely, man. And thank
Awesome.
you all for listening, guys. Bye.
All right. Take care, guys.